One of these days, we're going to have to delve into the gold standard of the dysfunctional family movies.
I don't have friends. I got family.
And of course, I'm talking about the Vin Diesel Fast and Furious films. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it's going to give you a sense of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. And this, though, is our doctorate level selection series. This is where we revisit a subgenre that we've already talked about before. And we kind of do a recap of what we talked about, the movies we talked about in that subgenre. And then we add a new 4th doctorate level selection. Something that's a little bit maybe lesser seen or newer or just a little bit more niche or deeper cut or fresh or whatever. Something new to add to the conversation for that particular subgenre. And today, the subgenre that we're revisiting is the dysfunctional family subgenre. And in our original video on dysfunctional families, we talked about how dysfunctional families are kind of like a horror trope, really. They're kind of a common thing to see in a horror movie. You know, there's kind of a normal trait to have in the characters in a horror film. But what we were talking about in this subgenre are films where the dysfunctional family is a key component or core element of the plot for the movie. Something that is where it's prominent, front and center, if you will. And the movies that we talked about kind of reflected that in the subgenre, that this was the key for it. And at the time we made that video, it was kind of the same time of year as it is now. It's now on the holidays. So we thought, what better time to talk about dysfunctional families than at the holidays? So that's what we did when we did the original video, and that's why we're doing the video today. And we're going to go ahead and get into our dysfunctional family doctorate selection in a minute. But first, let's do a recap of what we talked about in the previous video. Let's do that recap right now. The first dysfunctional family movie we looked at was Frailty. And we talked a bit about how Frailty is a really underrated gem. It feels like a movie that's been a little bit forgotten. People don't seem like they talk about it quite as much, even though it seems like it's held up really well. When I do talk to people who see it for the first time soon or recently, it seems like it holds up extremely well. And I think part of that is because of the cast led by Bill Paxton and Matthew McConaughey. And Bill Paxton directed this movie. And it does seem like it still resonates with people because of the quality of the talent behind it. But we also talked about how it's got these religious overtones, these religious elements and themes that really work for this, and tying the religious aspect into the dysfunctional family aspect is a really cool way to make this movie feel kind of timeless, kind of relevant to everybody. And it does do a really good job of making that work in a way that, I don't know, felt creepy and realistic, but also kind of supernatural at the same time. And while we talked about how it could actually be in the religion subgenre or in the supernatural subgenre, it felt right to put in the dysfunctional family subgenre because the family dynamics in that movie are really core and key to what's going on in that film. So that's why we put it there, and that's why we felt like it deserved a lot of shine and needed to be talked about more, and I still feel that way. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And the second dysfunctional family movie we talked about was Stoker. And we talked about how Stoker was really arguably much more of a demented family drama than a horror film, but that, you know, demented family drama really works well for this subgenre. It's a Park Chan-Wook film, you know, the director of Old Boy. It does a lot of great movies. And we talked a little bit about him and how good of work he does and how good of work he's doing here. We talked a lot about Nicole Kidman and the great work she does in this movie, but we talked about the idea of how this movie makes you feel uncomfortable with its themes and with the plot, what's going on in it, and how the idea of dealing with family loss can be translated in different ways and how different family members react in different ways and how it leads to a lot of the drama and the uncomfortableness in this movie. We talked about how surprisingly dark and morbid this movie is, how the tension is just ratcheted up in this movie and kind of permeates throughout the entire film. It's all credit to Park Chan-Wook and the job he did of making this movie just really work really well. It's, again, another underseen gem that people don't talk about as much, and I don't think people really know much about it, and so going in blind is the way to go. It's another one that would get a high recommend from me. And of course, the last dysfunctional family horror movie we looked at was Hereditary. And we talked about how Hereditary could honestly be called elevated horror, depending on how you feel about that term. We talked about that a little bit too. And how Ari Aster really knocks it out of the park here. He's a rookie film director. This is like his first feature film, or at least first mainstream theatrical release. And he just knocked it out of the park here, just really crushed it. But we also spent a lot of time talking about how the family dynamics and the family dysfunction in this movie are a key element to this movie and are so good, so well done, that you arguably don't even need the horror elements in this movie, because you'd have a really wonderful dysfunctional family drama without the horror elements. But the horror elements, of course, add a whole lot to this movie and make it go next level and then some. But the movie is strong because of the direction, because of this dysfunctional family idea, and the epic cast, including most notably Toni Collette. We talked about Rob from an Oscar, by the way, again. But we talked about also how this movie does a good job of not marketing it and spoiling it. We talked about how this is one of the rare situations where watching the trailer actually probably enhances the experience of the movie. Didn't want to spoil anything, but watching this trailer makes it actually a better experience, and this movie wash over you and surprise you. But we had nothing but high things to say for Hereditary. I still feel the same way years later. I love this movie. I think it's great, and it's not an understatement when it's pretty well known, but if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. So those are our picks for the dysfunctional family horror subgenre, but now we're going to add a new doctorate level selection. Our doctorate level selection for the dysfunctional family horror subgenre is Cobweb. Now, Cobweb came out in 2023, so it's relatively new, and it's part of why we're making it on the list here, because it just came out in the last couple of years. And it's directed by Samuel Bowden, and this is his feature film debut. And he's done a really nice job with his first debut movie here. And when this movie came out, it was kind of well, let's put it this way, horror fans have opinions on this. It's hot and cold on the opinions on this one, but we're going to get into that in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about this little boy who is troubled and is getting bullied at school, having a hard time, and doesn't quite get along super well with his parents. And he starts to hear a voice coming out of the walls of his bedroom. And that voice is telling him stuff that is kind of disturbing, and is kind of leading him to maybe take another look at his overbearing and kind of abusive parents, and maybe decide to take some action on that would help him have a better life and help this voice maybe escape its confines. But we're going to stop there so as not spoil the movie for you. This movie, though, has a really cool aesthetic. It's a really cool look, and it's probably the thing that most everybody can agree on in this movie, is that it looks great. It's atmospheric. That's the word I see used a lot in reviews, and that's the word I would use for it too. It's got this creepy vibe to it that permeates the entire film. It really carries it forward the entire time. And it's important too, because the movie's plot might arguably be a little on the thin side, although it's definitely working from a dysfunctional family point of view. What you've got is this dysfunctional family via these overbearing, overprotective parents who are arguably abusive. I think it's not explicit, but I think it's pretty clear that they're abusive in some ways. And physically, hard to say, but it's very clear that there's something not right with them. They are off. They are not on the same page with each other, much less with their son. And they just act in ways that normal human beings don't seem to act, to the point where you're wondering what exactly is wrong with the parents. What is it about them that's going on? And they've cast some really good actors here. They've got Lizzie Kaplan as the mom, and Anthony Starr as the dad. Anthony Starr from The Boys. He plays Homelander. And I'll be honest with you, he's kind of doing a similar thing here, in the sense that he plays him kind of seemingly passive-aggressively psychotic. So it's kind of like the same thing that he's known for doing, but he does it really, really well, and it's very effective in this movie. But Lizzie Kaplan is the one that really shines for me. Now, I'm a Lizzie Kaplan fan, so I'm already predisposed to like her. But she's pretty great here, because she, unlike Anthony Starr, is doing something a little bit different from most of what I've seen her in. And she's doing it really well. She's really off-putting in this movie. Not quite creepy so much as just off-putting. She has some scenes that I guess are a little creepy, but she's really just kind of off-putting and like just wrong and off, and doesn't feel quite like a real mother. And it works really, really well. And the two of them together play off each other pretty well, because they are both antagonizing our lead character, the boy, and really making us feel for the boy, because we don't like the way the parents are treating him. But they're also kind of antagonizing each other a little bit, because they aren't on the same page. They aren't necessarily thinking about doing things the same way, and you're not really sure what's going on behind the scenes, because you're really getting everything from the boy's point of view. and not just narratively, but also visually. The way that this movie's shot is great because it's using really interesting camera angles, wide angle lenses, and all these camera tricks to give things from a kid's POV. So it's like shot low and everything is shot so that it looks bigger than it is. Rooms look more expansive than they are. Tables look broader than they are. People look taller than they are. It's really trying to put you in the shoes visually of the child. It's a really good, strong visual aesthetic to make this look good. The cinematography of this movie is fantastic. It's lit beautifully. It's just shot so well. Like I said earlier, the camera angles are really interesting and they do really enforce this child perspective that makes you feel for that kid even more. It's doing a really nice job of making you concerned for the kid, making you care about him, and just really, again, putting you in his shoes, putting you literally in his POV. Works fantastic. The visuals, this camera work, the lighting, all of that is doing heavy lifting. Like I said, the plot itself, I've seen reviews that say that it's kind of derivative, and I don't know if I'd go there exactly, but the setup is one thing that feels somewhat familiar. This idea of this kid who's kind of being like held almost captive by his parents and bullied and this and that, and then also like this entity in the house thing. These are elements that you've seen in other movies, and they're putting them together into this. But I feel like it's making something kind of new, and I felt like the movie went someplace that felt fresh enough. At least I didn't feel like it was completely derivative. Like I said, it might be wearing its influences on its sleeve, but I didn't feel like it was derivative. I thought it was going pretty interesting. Now, all that said, I do think that the ending might be a little lackluster. You can make an argument to me that the ending is slightly, but I mean the ending, I mean like the very, very ending of the movie might be a little bit limp, but overall, I really like this movie, but I'm not necessarily in the majority here. The critical reviews were mixed on this. The general public seemed to really be kind of mixed on this. The horror community seemed to be mixed on this. I've talked to horror friends who really liked this movie, talked to horror fans who kind of just shrugged their shoulders at it and say, I don't see what the big deal is. And I kind of get it. Like, I think it's very good. I like it quite a bit. But I understand why some people might just kind of be kind of meh about it or think it's kind of mid. I think that the mood and the atmosphere wins out. I think the aesthetic is enough to really carry it over the line to make it syllabus worthy. And I think it deserves to be seen. Now, it came out fairly recently. I think a lot of people did see it, but if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. And then I'd like to hear what you think about it. And if you've seen it already, and especially if you have different opinions on this, let me know in the comments. Let me know what didn't work for you about this because I'd be interested. I think this movie's underrated. I think that people aren't giving it enough credit for doing some really cool stuff visually with the camera work and with the set design and everything, and then also just narratively with just kind of coming with like a creepy idea and then carrying it through. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. And again, if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out and come back and let me know what you think of it. Hopefully you agree with me because I like it when I give you guys recommendations you like, but let me know what you think in the comments. So that's our Doctorate Level pick for the Dysfunctional Family Horror subgenre. But of course, I've got an extra credit selection for you. And this is one that I really wanted to talk about previously and just couldn't seem to figure out where to put it. So I'm putting it here. We're talking about right here. And the movie we're talking about is Sisters. Now, Sisters came out in 1972 and was directed by legendary director Brian De Palma. And I am a big De Palma fan. I like a lot of his movies. We talked about a couple here on the channel. We talked about Carrie. I think we talked about Dress to Kill. This is an early movie. This is earlier than those movies in his career. And this is one that is kind of like, it's got its cult following, but I feel like it's a little underseen or under talked about these days. But we're going to talk about it now and get into it. But first, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a French model who is a former conjoined twin, and she gets accused of murder by her neighbor, a reporter who witnesses the murder through the window from across the street. But the investigation into this woman starts to lead down a strange path of weird things going on, a weird, mysterious past, weird doctors, and all kinds of crazy shenanigans, and of course, hijinks abound. But we're going to go ahead and stop there so as to not spoil the movie for you, but this is De Palma kind of being De Palma. It's early De Palma, so you're just starting to see some of what he does here, but it's definitely gonna be his MO, his motif, his things that he's known for in this movie. Now, the first thing off the bat we're gonna mention are the Hitchcock references. Hitchcock is Brian De Palma's idol, and he's known for being kind of a Hitchcock, rip-off artist, if you want to call it that negatively, or just, an homage to Hitchcock, which is maybe the less pejorative way of looking at it. And at the time this movie came out, he was very much praised for this. People were really raving about the nods to Hitchcock in terms of style, the camera work and the takes, in terms of the storytelling with its weird twists and the very strange things. Like Psycho was clearly an influence for this movie. And even in terms of how the exposition is delivered, again, Psycho being an influence here is some of the stuff that De Palma's doing here that the critics really liked and thought, oh, he's homaging Hitchcock. This is before people started accusing him of just aping Hitchcock. But it's on display here. I mean, he even's using Bernard Herrmann to provide the score, and it's an excellent score. It's really quite good. But Bernard Herrmann, of course, who did Psycho, it's very much wearing its Hitchcock influences on its sleeve to its benefit. It's also got just like other kind of stylistic influences. I felt like there's a good giallo influence here in terms of the style, in terms of like the coloring in particular. Like the blood looks like almost like paint, you know what I mean? The walls are painted bright colors. There's the clothes and the curtains and stuff like that. It's not quite full on Argento, but it looks really bright and giallo style in a very good way. Again, De Palma mixing these influences, putting these things together into something a little bit more modern is great. It's a great idea. And he's also got a really great cast behind him on this, starting with Margot Kidder, who plays the conjoined twin French model. She is great here. And I'll be honest with you, it's easy to forget how great Margot Kidder was. Like, you go back and watch like the old 1970s Superman and stuff like that. What an incredible actress. And it just doesn't seem like she gets her dues or gets her flowers, She's really outstanding here in this role. And it's not actually the easiest role to play. And it's almost caricature-y, almost. And I think she rides that line really well to the role's advantage. It works out really, really well. And then Jennifer Salt, who is a frequent collaborator with Brian De Palma in many of his movies, she's playing the reporter, and she's given it the right kind of sass. She really feels like a 70s, like modern woman. And that's important. We'll get to that in the themes in a minute. But she really is selling that as kind of like this, insistent, pushy, gonna get the truth at any cost kind of person, ruffle some feathers, doesn't care. It's a good character to kind of propel the story forward, and it's doing a really good job of getting you into that story. Now, De Palma's got his influences on full display here, including some of his like De Palma stuff. Like De Palma is a little bit sleazy. Let's just call it what it is. It can be a little salacious, and right up front, you're getting that in this movie. Like you've got this game show that's like this Peeping Tom game show where like they tease a guy to see if he'll like, be a gentleman or if he'll peep on this woman getting undressed, something like that. It's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of played for laughs and stuff like that. But and I'll be honest, compared to like later De Palma, like Dressed to Kill, for example, it's much tamer than that. But it still does have a little bit of his sleaze that you would see kind of become a motif of his or a trademark of his. It's also got like a lot of the camera work he does, like POVs, the long takes, and the split screens. He's doing the split screen stuff here, which is like one of his biggest trademarks. And he does it really well here. He does it in this way so you can see from two different perspectives the same thing going on from two different perspectives. And it works really, really well. Like the guy who's trying to avoid the cops and he's on the hallway and he sees them. You can see where he's at. You can see where they're at. Done really, really well. It's the kind of stuff that I love from De Palma. That stuff works really great. He's doing a great job of it here. And he's tackling this kind of offbeat, bizarre story. Apparently, it was inspired by like this Soviet conjoined twins, this true story about the different personalities and stuff like that, and the looks on their face. Interesting stuff that De Palma talks about in terms of influences, but it leads to this really bizarre, again, Hitchcockian type story. You're kind of questioning what's reality. You're questioning people's motivations, stuff like that. But when it digs into the themes, it's pretty interesting. And I get some of this from the research that I did on this movie, but there's themes of voyeurism, which is pretty clear. There's a lot of people witnessing stuff, seeing stuff, speaking out about stuff, not speaking out about stuff. And that there's an interesting theme going on there about the perils and the aspects of voyeurism. But there's also arguably this critique of women's lib, right, which is the big thing from the 70s, women's liberation, and the idea of women's autonomy and their ability to kind of just do their own thing and live their own lives. That is an interesting critique that I think is valid here. Like, I think there is something to be said for what De Palma's messaging is regarding that concept and the message he's trying to push and shine a light on. It's an interesting take. I think there's a lot of research that's been done on that because this is kind of a cult favorite movie. And I haven't dug into it that much, but even on the surface, I think you're going to get what he's talking about there. And I think it's going to be worthwhile. It's worthwhile to have a conversation about this. Now, this movie is critically loved. It didn't really do well in the box office when it came out. It wasn't a hit, but it's got some cult love. It's endured as this enough that it even had a remake in 2006, which I haven't seen yet. I haven't heard anything particularly interesting about it, so I haven't really bothered to get around to it. Maybe I will check it out, but the original is where it's at. It's a great movie that is kind of like like I said, an underseen gem. It's one of De Palma's really more interesting, better movies, and that's saying something considering that I like a lot of his movies. But this one feels like it gets forgotten in the shuffle of like his great films. So this is one that if you haven't seen, I definitely would recommend checking it out because it's kind of a surprising shocker. You're not going to really be able to figure out where this is going, I think, and it's definitely a trip and a half. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. Let me know what you think, and if you have seen it, let me know what you think as well because I feel like this is one that people do feel pretty fondly about. And if you don't feel that way, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on it about it because everything I could find on it when I was doing the research seemed to be positive, and I'm positive on it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's positive. Check it out. So that's going to do it for our re-exploration into dysfunctional family horror. And this is, a subgenre that, like I said, it's pretty interesting because while this is kind of a familiar trope, it is fun to see movies that really focus on the family dynamic and really milk it that way. But this is one where you can get a little uncomfortable depending on how your family life is. So keep that in mind. But hopefully you're having a good time with these movies because I had a good time with them. And now it's time to have a good time with the Horror Trivia Pursuit card. It's that time, the video where I answer a question live on camera. And given the nature of dysfunctional families and the psychological impact of them, we're going to go with the psychological category on the card. And our question is this. What is the name of the hotel the Torrance family are caretakers to in 1980's The Shining? And I absolutely, positively, 100% know the answer to this question. The catch is, there's technically like two answers to this question. And I'm pretty sure I know which one they're looking for. But and I'm just gonna give both because I'm just gonna be that way. I'm gonna be that nerd. But it's interesting. We talked about The Shining, of course, on the channel, and I absolutely love The Shining. It's one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It would be on my top 10 list for sure. I saw that movie as a kid. It still messes me up to this day. I think it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, it's a must-see for your horror education, for sure. It's a bona fide classic for a reason. Stanley Kubrick, master director. Love it, love it, love it. Everything about it. It's so great. I even love movies about The Shining, like Room 237. Like we talked about that on the channel even. That's how much I like The Shining. So you bet your ass I know this the answer to this question. And I'm guessing a lot of you do too, because again, it's a very popular movie, very well known. Horror buffs know this movie and probably know the answer to this question. Now, I've prattled on a bit to give you some time to think about it. If you know the answer, you know it already. You should know this. If you're not sure, time to lock in a guess. And if you've narrowed it down to two like I have, time to pick one and go with that. So lock in your answer, okay? Pencils down, and I'm going to give you my answer. So it's the real hotel is the Stanley Hotel, but in the movie it's called the Overlook Hotel. So I'm pretty sure that the answer they're looking for is the Overlook Hotel. And we're going to check the card. Overlook Hotel. Yes. Overlook Hotel. Yeah, I as soon as I heard the question, I'm like, oh, Stanley Hotel. I'm like, but that's like the real place that it was made, not the actual movie title or the movie name for the hotel. So did you get this one right? Did you say Overlook? Did you say Stanley Hotel? Or did you like kind of hedge and say both like I did? Or did you come up with something else completely different? If you did, I'd like to hear about it in the comments below. I'd also like to hear what other dysfunctional family movies you think should make the cut here for the horror movie syllabus. There's a chance that we've talked about them in other subgenres. Like I said, dysfunctional families pop up in horror a lot. So I might have talked about it previously, but leave a comment down below about it, because if I haven't, I'm going to add it to my to-watch list, and maybe I'll do a video about it in the future. But until then, I'm just going to say, class dismissed.
Family, 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 family.